Internal Revenue Service, IRS, tax news. Get an identity protection PIN, IPPIN. So we're just doing a little bit more research on the IPPIN. So an identity protection PIN or IPPIN is a 6-digit number that prevents someone else from filing a tax return using your social security number. So if someone else has access to the social security number, then this is a way to have kind of that double check or that double authentication in some way so that they can't file a tax return even though they possibly have the social security number. The IPPIN is known only to you and the IRS and helps us verify your identity when you file your electronic or paper tax return. Eligibility. If you are a confirmed victim of identity theft and we have resolved your tax accounts issue, we'll mail you a CP01A notice. There's a link to that notice here with your IPPIN each year. So if this basically came up from people that were victims of identity theft, someone basically using their social security numbers, and it looks like they put together then this system of an IPPIN in order to give that double check in those cases. And now they're thinking about having an opt-in into the program so people possibly that were not victims could still use this verification system possibly to prevent, as a preventative measure in the future in case someone gets their social security number, to prevent them from being able to talk to the IRS and or file a tax return with it. So starting in 2021, you may voluntarily opt into the IPPIN program as a proactive way to protect yourself from tax-related identity theft. If you want to opt in, please note you must pass a rigorous identity verification process. Spouses and dependents are eligible for an IPPIN if they can pass the identity proofing process. How to get an IPPIN. If you're a confirmed victim of theft victim, we will mail you an IPPIN on a CP01A notice if your case is resolved prior to the start of the next filing season. If you're volunteering for the IPPIN opt-in program, you should use the online Get an IPPIN tool. If you don't already have an account on irs.gov, you must register to validate your identity. So you got to go to irs.gov website, the IRS website, log in, get an account going on the IRS website. Before you register, read about the Security Access Identity Authentication process. There's a link to the Security Access here. Note, an IPPIN is valid for 1 calendar year. You must obtain a new IPPIN each year. The IPPIN tool is generally unavailable mid-November through mid-January each year. Then there's a link to get an IPPIN here. And then we have note, if you've already registered for an IPPIN or have one of the following accounts, you should log in with the same username and password. That would be a Get Transcript, online account, online payment agreement. If you lost the IPPINs, if you receive the annual IPPIN via mail but lose or fail to receive your CP01A notice, you may use the Get an IPPIN tool, there's a link to that here, to retrieve your number. Review the Retrieve Your IPPIN for details. Alternatives to the online tool: if you're volunteering for an IPPIN opt-in program and you can't successfully validate your identity through the Get an IPPIN tool, there are alternatives. Please note, using an alternative method will delay your IPPIN. And then we have the filing an application for an IPIN, so you can look into that with more detail. Requesting an in-person authentication. Those are the options you can read more about. There'll be a link to this in the description if you would like to. Use an IPPIN. Enter the 6-digit IPPIN when prompted by your tax software product, or provide it to your trusted tax professional preparing your tax return. Correct IPPINs must be entered on electronic and paper tax returns to avoid rejections and delays. An incorrect or missing IPPIN will result in the rejection of your e-file return or a delay of your paper return until it can be verified. So I would imagine, of course, you're filing your tax return if you're doing it with online software. Typically, you'll have your social security number. That's the thing that's going to tell the IRS whether or not it's going to be accepted. In other words, if you have an invalid social security number, it's going to kick back. The software is going to kick it back and not accept the return because it doesn't have anything to tie it out to. But now we got this double check kind of verification here. So it would work in a similar process where, you know, it would have to be able, if you register for this number, it would have to be able to then identify the number in order to process the tax return. So don't reveal your IPPIN to anyone. It should be known only to your tax professional and only when you are ready to sign and submit your return. The IRS will never ask for your IPPIN. Phone calls, emails, or texts asking for your IPPIN are scams. Resources: frequently asked questions about the identity protection personal identity number IPPIN. There's a link to that here. There'll be a link to this in the description.